Okay, so some of your wants you to be able to know is your three classes of cnidarians, and you correctly said hydrozoa, scyphozoa, and then the sea flowers are known as who? Your anthozoans. All right. So one of the things we talked about yesterday in regards to the food gathering for, we'll just say, a jellyfish or even a medusa, we know that inside their tentacles, which is a recurring theme for this phylum, all cnidarians have tentacles, and in those tentacles, they do what? They produce venom. Okay, so they have nematocysts in their venom, or excuse me, they have nematocysts in their tentacles, and then cnidocytes in those structures, the nematocysts inside the tentacles. And then finally, one of the very first things, what does it mean to be circular? Every one of these animals has this in common. What type of symmetry is that? They all have radial symmetry. That's right. Okay, so what are some characteristics of this hydrozoan? If it's in the sessile stage, they don't move, but that's called a polyptyn. That's right. These animals begin in a polyp, or you could say sessile. That's fine too. We know what you mean by sessile because that means they don't move. In a polyp or sessile stage. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to stay sessile. What is unique to some of these animals that they do? It was one of your vocab terms as well. Yeah, they dimorph or go through dimorphism and change into what? Nope. Close. Don't look at this in Greek mythology. Yeah, Medusa. Go through dimorphism into... Now, not only is it going into Medusa that's important, how is it different than this guy, this part of its life cycle? It starts to move. Okay, go through dimorphism into a Medusa, which is free swimming. Now, these animals have something in this stage that jellyfish do not. And you said it earlier, starts with a V. Vowel. Yep. And have a vowel. Okay? So, that does it for our hydrozoans. Now, what are some characteristics of these scyphozoans? First of all, who are they? You don't have to say irukandji. You could if you wanted to, but you had just alluded to that. These are the jellyfish. And for this level, I think just to keep this simple, I've always said these animals, rather than going through a dimorphic stage, which they do, but they're different than that of the hydrozoans, here we just say these animals are free swimming. Free moving, swim, move, I don't care what you say. Any one of those, these animals actually move. Okay? The reason we want to make that categorical difference is because now we're moving on to your last class, the anthozoans, which is something significant about them. What would stick out in your mind? Yes, we said they're sea flowers. You could say, yeah, color, that's true. sessile. Okay? And one aspect we want you to be able to mention is when we look at these medusa or the jellyfish, where are the tentacles? They're on the bottom. Who are the anthozoans? All right? I almost said marlin, but good job, Nemo. Okay? So with the sea anemones, the tentacles are where? Not on the bottom. They're on top. They have an actual crown of tentacles. Okay, so I'm going to move this up just a little bit. Anthozoa. Okay, so these animals are sea anemones. Okay, so you already alluded to that. What's significant? What two characteristics are significant about this class of cnidarians? They're sessile. I get it with the color, that's true. But what else? How do they envenomate their prey? But what's significant about those tentacles? Yeah, it's a crown. It's up on top. That's right. Okay? So these animals are the sea anemones. They are sessile and have a crown of tentacles. That's all making its way on there. So yes, your hydrazoans, scyphozoans, and anthozoans. You want to know that dimorphism, it does take place in the scyphozoans, but let's not get them too interchanged. Okay? And free swimming occurs in the hydrozoans, and they have that structure with a velum. Jellyfish do not have that. Okay? And then anthozoans, they're sessile. We talked about that. And the crown of tentacles is up on top rather than on the bottom. Okay. All right. Anything else? Jeez, I didn't even think we were going to get that question out. Just, boom, bonus question. Okay. All right. I don't think so, Tim. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I'll leave that up there in case some of you are still writing information. Now be serious. We can't be happy that Minnesota's out. Yeah, and I don't think you are, but and maybe some of us could not care less. That's another thing. If you want to, that's often misrepresented or misspoke out in public. You don't want to say, "Oh, I could care less." Well, then that means you actually care. So, even though they're out, I figured that was going to happen, so I could say I could not care less. I do. It's kind of sad to see it come to an end, but that's just another thing. When you go out in public and if you really don't, something really doesn't concern you or really don't care, you say, I could not care less. Okay. Yeah, no. I want to see Verlander have a good outing on Friday night because I think that's when Game 1 would take place in Houston. I think it's not in New York, it'd be in Houston. Okay, which I kind of thought about this before you people who had stopped in here. New York's closer. Do you know who that is? Ardolis? No. Aroldis Chapman, left-hander. Okay? He's known pretty consistently throws in the triple digits, which means what? 100 plus miles an hour. Okay? So, for bonus one. Well, still is. I mean, he doesn't pitch anymore. I don't want to say was, and you think he's dead. He is blank. Okay? The reason that I think this is so phenomenal is because for bonus 2, how many seasons did the answer for number 1? How many seasons did he pitch? It was blank. Because usually what happens, if you know anything about baseball, and do you said you pitch, right, at all? Yes? Okay. So about what age? 13, 14? Now this is just my opinion. A fastball, of course, maybe a changeup, but if you're going to throw an off-speed pitch, it better be which one, do you think?
Slider.
No. Well, you can, but do you ever throw a slider? Did you throw curveballs? Now, anatomically speaking, okay, one of the things that I would suggest is that anyone growing up pitching, you should never throw a slider until you're at least 17 or 18 years old. And the reason is just because of the mechanics of the arm motion. When you throw a curveball, you're doing this with your wrist. You can do that all day. Well, not all day. You're snapping it with a fastball. This is a curveball, but when you're doing a slider, does anyone know that? You're close. You're coming across like this, and you twist your arm like that. I mean, I can feel it in right here because I was working on a deck. I was mixing concrete last night. You're doing something like this in a wheelbarrow. You could call that getting old too. But what happens is when you snap that, you're putting a lot of stress on your elbow joint right here. And they call it a specific type of surgery. Tommy John surgery. That's right. So, but that's just what I tell people is you should never be throwing a slider. Well, I shouldn't say never, but you should not be throwing a slider until you are physiologically fit to do that. And to me, the human body for men is just not ready until they're 17 or 18 years old. Even then, that's why you see a lot of major league pitchers having to have Tommy John surgery. All right, we'll catch up to you next time.